Hello and welcome. It is episode number 32, the Hilarious Humanitarians podcast. I am Frances Echeverria, licensed marriage and family therapist. Deanna Silverman, my partner, is out on an impromptu trip, but we do have someone special joining us on the show today as we turn our attention in the month of June to Pride. And we'll talk about that coming up in just a couple of minutes. But first, I'd like to let you know that if you haven't done so already, please subscribe and rate the podcast and share it with your friends because that helps keep us up on that top 200 list, which is certainly appreciated. Also, before we officially get started, we want to let you know that the Hilarious Humanitarians podcast is for informational purposes only, does not constitute medical advice, and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please always seek the advice of your physician, mental health professional, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a condition you're dealing with. Also, you can find resources by dialing 211 in the area you live in the United States. It'll at least get you started, or check out NAMI online if you're looking for resources. So this morning, I am joined by Melissa. Melissa is a dear friend of mine, and we're going to be talking about Pride Month and how that gets started. And before we jump into Melissa's story, I want to give you some background on that. According to statistics, which we have to take with the idea that there will be a part of the population that is not reflected in this due to anonymity. But if you talk about LGBT, the LGBT community, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender, and that's even gone on to include other letters, often a Q for questioning. The term queer is also used as well in that. There are, according to reports, at least 3% of Americans who identify as gay or lesbian and 0.7% that identify as bisexual. Now, that number has fluctuated and has increased as much as to 4.1% in 2016. So we have to understand that those numbers are going to fluctuate. But it gives you a point that this is a big part of the American population that is going to be celebrating a lot in June. So why June, you ask? Well, it's chosen in the United States for LGBT Pride Month to commemorate the Stonewall riots, which occurred in the end of June 1969. And since then, this month has been officially declared Pride Month by presidents of our United States over the years. Stonewall riots were a pivotal moment in the LGBT movement where it did become violent, but at the time, those demonstrations did really create a shift in providing equal rights, or at least getting on the right path for more humane and equal rights for the LGBT community. So if you'd like to do more research on that, I welcome you to do that. So now that I feel like I've done a little bit of my professor spiel, I can get to introducing my friend Melissa that is here. Hello.
Hello.
Okay, Melissa, so I hit you up and said, want to come on and tell your coming out story?
Yes, you did. And yeah, I was kind of reluctant, not going to lie, because not very many people know my story. But then I gave it a couple, really like 2 minutes, really thought. And you know what? I would love to share it.
All right, and we're going to get into how this is going to go in our podcast today. So we're going to learn Melissa's story and then also how that is transformed into parenthood and some interesting stuff that she has been working on and how this transformation has taken place. But what's important to know is that Melissa is like one of my go-to people for how to deal with guys. And you're going, wait a second, Frances, why is that? I'm assuming she's lesbian based on the way you've set this whole thing up. But that was not always the case.
It wasn't. It was not always the case. It was actually 1 month after my 29th birthday that I started dating one woman, and I'm still with her today, and I'm 33. So the majority of my life, I dated men.
So that's why those guy relationships didn't work out.
You know, everything happens for a reason, so I've been told. And you know what? I'm a believer.
So how would you describe your 29 years of being a straight female? I mean, was there any questioning at all, or were you just...
You know what? There was not one question in my mind. I was straight as can be. And it's funny because when I came out, I came out to my high school best friend. Her name is also Melissa. And I told her, and she says, "That's funny. I knew you were gay 5 years ago. how the hell did you know I was gay 5 years ago?
I thought I was keeping a handle on
But
this.
the thing is, I didn't even know. Maybe there was a vibe I was giving out. I have no idea. I was dating a man who she knew 5 years ago. So she never really went into that and how she knew or how she came across that thought. But it's funny to look back on that because, again, I had no idea. I was so far in the closet, apparently, that I didn't even know I was in the closet, you know?
Like, this is a roomy closet. I'm going to get real comfortable in here.
Oh, yeah. But no, it was the summer of 2013 that, you can grow a bond. Like, I'm close to you.
Yeah.
And we have a bond. Do I want to sleep with you? No.
Yeah, let's stop and clarify that real quick.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we're going to kind of jump into addressing some stereotypes as they present themselves. Just because you're in a friendship with someone who has the same sex as you and maybe you're straight and they are gay or bisexual or lesbian does not mean they want to have sex with you. The same way, I know this disappoints some of the men that I've friend zoned. I don't want to have sex with every man that I interact with. And I think that that's a common stereotype, especially I deal with this because homophobia can be so entrenched in specifically amongst men, doesn't necessarily mean that it is, but where I deal with this on a clinical and personal level, where men will be like, well, I like him, but I'm not gay. Or, but he's gay, but like, I'm not, like, we're not like gonna sleep together. It's okay, you can have feelings, you can have an intimate relationship emotionally without getting sexually involved. So, back to your story, your friend had called you out and knew it, but were you starting to get just feelings that kind of felt different? Or?
Yeah, there was a moment that I kind of felt, I don't know, I was very close to a friend of mine. We were best friends, and we did pretty much everything together. And there was a moment that happened, and I can't even pinpoint it, but I know the feeling had changed. And it wasn't, oh, this is my best bud, we're just, hanging out, we're traveling and doing all this stuff together. It was, holy shit, I'm gay. It was almost overnight. It was, holy shit, I'm gay. And I think it was in that moment that I started questioning, maybe 5 years ago I was thinking about this, like my friend Melissa pointed out.
And you shoved it.
And I shoved it in the deep, dark corners of my soul, I guess. But yeah, like I said, everything happens for a reason. Maybe this person who I became close to, and I started developing these more physical feelings toward, maybe she was brought in my life for a reason. It comes down to that. But like you just said about the stereotypes, I didn't find all of my girlfriends, all of my friends who were female, I did not find them attractive. I did not want to sleep with them. I have a lot of close friends, but it was never physical until I met this one person.
And so, as you mentioned, that maybe it was this person, this time that made it safe, right? Because I think that's when we have those moments of clarity, is when either we're feeling really scared and the whole world is upside down, and then you have just a moment of clarity, or you're feeling really safe and you let the guards down. And sometimes those guards, those biggest ones, are the ones that we have amongst really having some self-reflection.
Oh no, most definitely. I'm not going to lie to you. I think what helped let my inhibitions and my guard down that particular moment was alcohol. I'm not going to lie.
Let's be real.
Yeah, let's be real. That happens. And anyone who knows me, if I have an ounce of alcohol on me, I'm an open book. I can see things a little clearer. I tend to talk a lot. I tend to become a little more friendly and a little more
She
open.
smiles a whole lot more too, and her eyes close a little bit. I've seen this.
Yeah, she has.
She may or may not threaten men that you date as well.
I will do that sober. And that's why I'm a good friend, I think.
In this particular situation, you have this moment of clarity, and you tell your best friend from high school.
Right.
Now, sometimes people will ask, and this is people who are just asking me questions, and this is also people who are in, I say the coming out process, but that's only because that's the only phrase I can really find that really works. I think people understand it and it doesn't minimize. But sometimes people, they will push that down because it changes their life. It changes their existence. It changes the way they have to interact with family members. And what does this mean? Especially if you are 29 and up until this point, you've lived your life as a straight female. So you told your friend, and then what?
You tell one friend, you're going to tell your other close friends. And I ended up actually telling my roommate, I told probably a handful of people and all of my closest friends. My best friend from high school, I knew 5 years ago. The other 4, what do you mean? You've been dating men. How do you know? I think you're crazy, or, you're unhappy. You haven't met the right man yet. If I had a nickel for every time someone told me that I had not met the right man yet. Look, listen, I've dated, again, 29 years of dating men. Well, not 29 years, but majority of my life dating men. I hit every end of the spectrum, both ends of the spectrum. I dated guys older than me, younger than me, different backgrounds, different social and economic backgrounds. I didn't have the stomach flips. I didn't have the butterflies. I didn't have that connection. And it wasn't until I felt really connected to this one person who opened my eyes to a whole new world. I just didn't have that connection with any of the guys I dated.
So I want to say, this is where I get little, when anybody ever says, well, you haven't met the right straight partner, I want to go, well, maybe you're gay or a lesbian, but you just haven't met the right gay or lesbian. There's a really great guided imagery that we've done in trainings before that really paints the picture of if you flip the script like that. And I don't know that we'll have time during the podcast today to get to it, but perhaps as we move kind of towards, in June, I would like to do more of these episodes that are based on Pride Month. It would be worth bringing out, but just that statement right there. Well, maybe you haven't met the right guy yet. To ask them the same question, but someone of the same sex or gender, and to see their head flip. It doesn't make sense. That argument does not make sense. And when it's when you know. And I think sometimes culturally, and because parents don't have the right resources or things, you don't want things to be hard for your kid. Maybe you see things that pop up, but you kind of redirect or somehow silence. And so these things can't be expressed until someone is older and in a more individual, independent space. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
So you told some of your friends, and some of them passed the test, and some of them needed a little bit of tutoring.
Yes, they needed a little guidance on where I was coming from, maybe where I was going to. After that, it was time to tell my parents.
Why don't you give us a little background on, let's say, right around the election time of that time, what signs were in the front yard?
Well, the election here in California for Prop 8, and that was banning same-sex marriage.
It was protecting.
Well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's get the marketing angle right.
And there were 3 or 4 signs. And my parents, they have a nice house, but their yard is not huge. You do not need 4 giant yellow signs that say vote yes on Prop 8. Again, like you said, to protect the sanctity of marriage, and we won't go there. But I remember driving home. This is back in 2008 when the election took place. This is right before the November election. I drove home and I saw these signs, and it didn't really affect me because I was straight. At the time, it didn't affect me. I had really close friends in the community, LGBT community, and it should have affected me just because it affected them.
But sometimes we're not ready to do that. Yeah.
Right. But it didn't affect me personally, and so I didn't even really give it 2 thoughts until 29th birthday. Back in, was it now?
Don't make me math.
No, it was 5 years later.
Okay.
It was 5 years, 5 years later. And it hits me, I'm going to have to tell my parents, who are hardcore Catholic. They're involved in the church, and they believe what they believe. And I was raised Catholic.
Small community.
Very small community. Very small. And we're talking about a city who actually is, I would say, like 90% anti-LGBT. When they tried to do a pride parade, it was banned. It was voted on in the community. The city council banned that parade. And that was just as recent as 2-3 years ago.
Right. We're not talking about 1976 here. We're talking about just recently. Right. So this stuff exists. And I think when people live or exist in a bubble that isn't taking into account even smaller communities within, I mean, we live in California, which is pretty liberal, even within California, that this stuff is happening. So you go home and you tell...
Well, I ended up telling my mom via email.
Oh, gosh.
And here's the reason why. She hounded me. Again, I dated men. She hounded me. Well, who are you dating now? It's like, I'm not ready to tell you. Well, what does he do? What does he do what does he do for a living? Can he support you?
All the traditional gender roles.
Right. And, I'm not ready to tell you. And the next day, I was so fired up. And I had only started dating my girlfriend. We were only together for, I want to say, a month at that time. And so I emailed my mom, and I said, listen, you want to know who I'm dating? Her name is Erin.
Boom! Dropped it on her.
I did. And she was at work. It was great. And so she emails me back immediately and says, I'll call you later.
You spelled that wrong.
Yeah, exactly. She says, I'll call you later. She didn't call me. So I called her, and I said, so do you want to talk about the email? She says, no. No, we're heading out to dinner now, so I'll talk to you later.
Super avoid it.
Very deflection. She was always too busy to talk about it. So my mom never called me back about that. I had to call her. It took probably another 2 weeks before I actually talked to my mom again about anything.
That's gut-wrenching.
And we're talking about someone who I talk to every single day.
And were you just not going to crack and just let her call you back, or what?
I'm stubborn. I am stubborn, and I didn't want to give in, and I didn't want to bring it up again because I know, again, she has her thoughts and her beliefs, and I didn't want to press it, but it needed to be discussed at some point. And again, this was back in this was September of 2013. We're closing in on a holiday. We're closing in on Thanksgiving, and I know she probably didn't tell my dad yet. I have to ask her at least. So I call her up. I said, Mom, regarding my email, regarding the fact that you haven't talked to me for 2 weeks, did you tell Dad? She says, no, that's something you have to do. Well, great. I'm as much as I talk to my mom every single day, I'm closer to my dad. Yeah, and he's my stepdad, but he's my dad, So I call him up, and actually I called the house. So I call the house.
Which, by the way, this shows how old school your parents are. They have a landline.
Yes. So I call my parents, my dear old folks' landline, and my mom answers. I'm talking to her for a few minutes, and I say, okay, well, go ahead and put Dad on the phone. I'm going to explain to him the email. I'll tell him everything. She says, okay. He gets on the phone, and I don't even remember exactly what I said. I know it was along the lines of, so I'm seeing someone. Her name is Erin. We've been together for a couple months now, and we're going to see how it goes and where it goes, but I just wanted to give you that heads up. Holidays are coming up. If I end up going to Thanksgiving a little later, it's because I'm spending time with my girlfriend. And he was silent for a long while on the phone. He says, okay, well, here's your mom again.
God, the avoidance is just driving me crazy.
And those are my parents. And this is what I'm used to. But it was like a dagger because he wouldn't address it. And I'm so close to this man. How can you be so avoidant and not accept that part of my life?
Right, and it's just completely invalidating. You don't have to agree with somebody, but at least validate their existence. And this is a way that people silence others without even having to do anything. And they can make the argument, well, I didn't yell, I didn't get mad. Well, yeah, but you did shut down the conversation. So you were basically you were shutting it down. You were silencing somebody. So what happened with the holidays?
So the holidays came, it was Thanksgiving, and I went to my hometown, and traditional, we go to my grandma's house, have a big dinner. The entire time, I'm talking to my cousins, my aunts and uncles, and my mom was even talking to me, and everything just fine.
But Erin didn't go.
Erin didn't go.
Okay.
It was still fresh. Still a new relationship, so she didn't go with me, and I didn't do anything holiday related until Christmas.
Okay.
So Thanksgiving, I go to hometown, talking to all of my relatives. My dad doesn't say hi to me. He, I'm Hispanic, so the Hispanic tradition is you hug every single one of your family members when you arrive someplace. I hugged everyone. I hugged him, but he didn't say anything to me. He didn't even really squeeze me back, I remember. So that was like a whole nother dagger, because again, we're so close, and now he's just disregarding my existence, really, my presence at a family function. And this is Thanksgiving. This is where you're supposed to come together and, show each other love and be thankful and grateful for having each other in each other's lives. But he didn't even realize he didn't even acknowledge my presence there, and that's what really hurt. So I went home after dinner, and I remember I barely finished the last roll on my plate, and I was like, I'm out.
So you kept it together? You didn't blow up or?
I didn't, the thing is, I don't really cry. I don't show my emotions through crying, but on the way home, I cried like a freaking baby. And it hit me hard, again, because how dare you not even, I'm your daughter, for crying out loud.
Right.
So I remember I drove home and I was crying. And actually, I worked in retail, so I had to work that night. And it was awful, because there I am racing to this retail store where I'm supposed to keep it together, and with all these Black Friday shoppers.
Which, by the way, is a whole nother topic on how can we just not do Black Friday shopping, please? Because you have families like this that have to go and then work. So,
Oh, yeah. Well, I raced home, and it was an hour and a half away. So I raced back home so I could work, and I'm just drying tears from my eyes. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do after this. And luckily, Erin has been a very strong, she's been a pillar in my life. And so I remember I actually called her on my way to work that night, and she said, don't worry, he'll come around one day. And if he doesn't, you have so many friends and other family members that have your back. Just brush it off right now. And so I did, and I went to work, and all was well. But that also planted the seed for me not wanting to go back to my hometown for Christmas, and I didn't. And it was the very first Christmas in the 29 years that I didn't spend a holiday with my family.
You kind of had to make a stand at that point, right? Like, what was going to be more important, you and self-validating this huge change in your life, or making people happy?
I have spent a lot of my life making others happy. It was time for me to kind of self-reflect and make myself happy. I was when I dated men, I was in relationships where I paid their bills, and I made them happy. I bought them things.
Long-term relationships, too.
Long-term relationships, yes. Years and years of relationships. And it was time to put myself first. And so I did. And so I took the stand. I did not go home for Christmas that year. But luckily, I had a very close family I actually worked for. They invited me into their home for Christmas. I spent the night there. I remember having Christmas morning with them. It was awesome. And they brought me in, and we're still close to this day.
I think what's really interesting, a concept that I've kind of borrowed and then taken into clinical practice, is that LGBTQ individuals often have a family of origin and a family of choice, because unfortunately we do live in a society still which has become more accepting, but there are still these families that reject. And I want to say real quick, we're going to get to the happy part, because Melissa's dad is amazing, and sometimes it's just an adjustment period. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, we have families of origin and families of choice. And in the LGBT community, this is especially important, because so many over the years have been disowned, cast aside, ignored. And so they find these families that fill in the blanks and provide the love and support. And so this family sounds like one of those. It happened in this case to just be really good friends. And we'll get to the good part, like I said, about Melissa's family being so awesome and able to adjust. But for some, you may have to sever ties. And I use that family of choice idea with anybody who comes from a family with a lot of dysfunction, whether it's a family that has abuse history, addiction issues. If perhaps I've seen this a lot where, somebody has grown up in a very, very strict, almost to an unhealthy degree, religious situation where they literally do get kicked out of the family, and they create these families of support, because we are wired for connection, and that is so important. So, hooray, cheers, thank you to this family that took you in on Christmas. And I know that was a pivotal moment, and I can't even imagine how horrible that feeling had to have been, but then like also bittersweet because here's this other family that's loving you.
Right. This other family welcomed me into their home. They had gifts for me. Each family member had a gift for me, and it was like I was a kid again. Christmas morning, waking up to gifts. But yeah, so after Christmas, I, again, taking everything that my mom had told me, just avoiding.
Right.
Taking everything with a grain of salt. Everything, and I say this often, even now, you give everyone the benefit of the doubt. It was hard, but I let some time pass, and I'm talking a few months. I let a few months pass.
Which had to have felt terrible because you were so close with them.
Right. And I mean, I would talk to my mom on and off throughout those months, but I not once talked to my dad because he wouldn't call me. I would text message him because, again, anyone who knows me knows that I, my last name in Spanish, it means loyal. And I am loyal as hell. And I will hang on to a friendship, and I will make you be my friend.
Let me love you.
Basically. And so I would shoot him text messages every now and then throughout the period where we weren't really talking vocally, and he never responded.
So you were having to be the grown-up.
I was a grown-up, and at one point I remember having this moment where I was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm an adult. You are an adult. You're going to listen to me. And so I text messaged him. I said, listen, I know what time you get off of work. I know when you'll be home. I'm going to call your landline. So I'm going to call you up, and you're going to answer. And if you don't answer, that's it. I have no more attempts for me to try to get back into your life. And so I called later that day, I believe. He answered. We talked. I said the whole, I'm an adult, you're an adult. I called him out. And it took every ounce of courage in me to stand up to this tall man. He's
a big dude. He's a bear of a man.
He's a bear of a man. And it took, and I'm not tiny, but for Christ's sake, to stand up to your father like that, it takes a lot. And looking back, I'm like, I had no idea how I was so courageous. But I did. And I called him out, and he used the excuse that right around the same time that I came out, I also quit school. So he used the excuse.
Well, you were just a total degenerate at this point.
I was going through some things, okay? I was going through some things. So he used the excuse that, I was just disappointed that you quit school. That's why I stopped talking to you. Okay, well, then you give me a lecture. You don't, be the parent and give me the lecture. So after calling him out, he kind of came around, and within a few weeks, it was time for me to introduce Erin to my family. And I took her back to my hometown, and she met my parents for the first time. And you know her, she's quiet.
She's quiet and sweet and so just
opposite of me. She's the opposite.
You were a good balance.
Okay, yes.
But she was walking into a lion's den. It could potentially.
Yes, it could have potentially been. Oh gosh. It could have potentially been just a riot, basically. Mm-hmm. But no, they welcomed her into their home. I think at that point they were easing into the idea that maybe I have a friend who I'm close to.
Okay, so they were, to each their own. They have to take their
baby steps.
Baby steps. Okay.
Baby steps. And so she met my family, and again, being as quiet as she is, and they had no idea what I saw in her. And I'm saying this. I had a conversation with him after we left,
Like, what made Erin make you lesbian?
Basically. and I mean, she's gorgeous, first of all.
Well, yeah.
But that aside, they know my personality. They saw this quiet girl coming in visiting, and they had no idea what it was. And now, almost 5 years later, they know why I love her. They know why we're together. She makes me a better person. And we talked earlier about, the men I dated, and we talked about straight relationships, same-sex relationships. You fall in love with who you fall in love with. You can fall in love with someone's personality. You can fall in love with someone's look, or, their sex appeal. I just had a conversation just on Thursday, actually, at dinner with a coworker. She has a huge crush on Jason Momoa.
Well, who doesn't?
Who doesn't? He's Aquaman. And I said, yeah, and again, I'm a lesbian. Even though I dated men, I consider myself lesbian. I'm not bi.
Okay, that's a clarification.
And I wanted to address that also. I'm not bi. And there's reasons why I can say that. Number one, if, God forbid, Aaron and I split up, I'm probably never going to date a man again.
Okay.
Not because, men are dogs or, no.
It's just not your thing.
It's just not my thing. So back to Jason Momoa.
Because anytime we can talk about Jason Momoa, it makes me happy.
Yeah, let's slip that in there. He is a very good looking man. He's buff. All that good stuff. What makes him so appealing is the way he talks in interviews about his family and about his wife, and he's so devoted and caring. You can fall in love with how someone looks, but you can also fall in love with their personality and just what they bring to the table.
And their values.
And their values, exactly. And so I had to explain that to my parents. Aaron's cute, but here's all these qualities. This is why I'm so connected to her.
This is how we do the podcast, and this is how Melissa and I talk regularly, is we veer off and come back and veer off and come back. But I want to bring that up because, as you mentioned, it was qualities that you fell in love with Aaron, and then found out kind of through the process that you identify as lesbian and not bisexual. I had a moment the other day, and I always struggle to talk about my personal life because it's a balance, and I don't even believe in this, but I don't want to jinx myself. But so I've been seeing somebody rather regularly, and I've talked about on here how he's too good looking and too fit. And I'm not saying that to be an asshole. It's just that, and I'm not saying it to be like, oh, he's so hot, you guys should know. No, it's because it's bringing up my body image issues raging to the surface, and I've actually had a thought about cutting it off because it makes me feel uncomfortable. But that aside, he was talking the other day, and the way he talks is just like how you and I talk. We story tell and we have circular conversations, but we always bring it back. And he made the comment that he works with people and he'll talk to them sometimes and he sees the lights dim, like they're not following. And I was just, as he's talking, and he's talking about something that has nothing to do with me, I'm just getting more and more excited. Like I'm connecting, I'm following the path of his communication, and I'm just going, oh my God, you are so fucking hot right now. Like I get exactly what you're saying. And it was this strange moment of finding that, the communication pattern and the ability to connect intellectually, where I'm realizing that is so important to me. And then immediately on Tuesday is when I was thinking about cutting it off because I'm clearly getting way too vulnerable and I'm stupid. But anyway, you can be attracted to different things. So they saw it, they got it. And now let's fast forward a little bit and then we're going to get into a different part of the story.
Right.
What does your dad call Aaron?
For a while there, it was, this is my daughter's girlfriend.
Okay, so
sometimes he was, at first it was, this is my daughter's friend.
Okay.
Then it evolved to, this is my daughter's girlfriend.
Okay.
Now we have a 2-year-old together, and we'll get to that part of the story. But, so we have a kid together. That is, I'm pretty sure that's his favorite grandkid.
I've seen the photos.
That's his favorite grandkid.
It's his favorite grandkid.
Now, Aaron is not even his daughter-in-law. When he introduces Aaron, he says, this is my daughter. So it went from not talking to me for 3-4 months to, I have an extra daughter. I have another daughter.
And this is part, I think, of the beautiful story and the reason why I wanted to start off with you as we jumped into Pride Month and turning directly to the issues of the LGBT community and some of the stories, is that not all stories have a great happy ending like this in terms of family coming around. But there are a lot of really good ones, and sometimes it just takes time. It's not because they're closed-minded assholes. It's because it's an adjustment. And for you, it took 29 years to get there.
Right.
And so maybe it's going to take your dad a few months. And that's not because of disrespect. It's because it changes the narrative. Then there are things that come up when this becomes a reality of like, oh, well, now I have to question the fact that I put these signs in my yard. What does that mean? What did that mean for my daughter that was coming? What does this mean for the things that I believe in? What does this mean? And let's be really real, for my child's safety, because those are real things that come up that become very realistic worries that people have to worry about. And it's like on top of just being worried about your kid's safety. So now your dad's got 2 daughters. So we're going to jump around a little bit, and there certainly isn't enough time in this hour podcast to cover all of it. But Melissa has a special project that she's working on where she's going to be telling her whole story. And I kind of want to fast forward to the part where you do have a daughter.
Yeah, so like I said, she's 2. She's 2.5.
So you guys, about 2 years in.
Oh, we were only 1 year in.
You were 1 year in and you decided, let's make a baby.
It was more of a forced decision medically. I had been told all my life I cannot have my own kid. I cannot carry my own child. And so went to the doctor one day and he said, you've been taking these progesterone injections, you've been taking this birth control that has added progesterone, and not to get too TMI here, but it's thickening the lining of your uterus.
Okay.
And you're ready, and I'm strongly suggesting that if you want kids in your future, you need to start right now. He didn't know I was in a same-sex relationship. He didn't realize the other obstacles I'd have to go through to get...
You didn't even tell your OBGYN?
No. I didn't like him. I wanted to switch. I was in a very gray area anyway.
Okay.
So, leading up to that point, I was told I was never going to have any kids. And then...
Which is, at 30-ish,
yeah,
devastating in its own...
Right. And I have nieces and nephews, and I have friends with kids, and it was great, but it's like, I knew that's what I want.
Okay.
I wanted that since I was 16. And so to be told you can't, and then to be told, you know what, you can.
Right, but do it now.
But do it now. You have to start now. Just because it was more of a likelihood of I would actually get pregnant. So immediately raced home, and I told Erin, and we had this long conversation. I say long conversation, and it really was, but it didn't take very long for her to say, let's do it. I said, my doctor said I have to start immediately, basically. If you see kids in our future, we have an important talk even further.
Right.
And it was moments, and she was all in. She really was. And so we did our research. We went online.
Because there's this thing called sperm doesn't. I just want to stop. And the reason why I'm laughing is that we don't think about these things. And we don't think about the things often that other people have to go through. It's one thing if your doctor had no idea giving you this conversation that not only were you going to have a conversation about having a kid, now you got to go and figure out the donor part.
Right.
So we take so many things for granted or just ignore them, not out of being jerks, but we just don't think about it. It's
ignorance if you're not in the nitty-gritty of that kind of situation.
And not a mean ignorance,
right,
but just a kind of obliviousness.
Right.
Like, I'm just going about my business. And that's understandable because we all have a lot of business to deal with. So you go home and you start doing your research.
Yeah, so we do our research, and we agreed that night when I went home from my doctor's office, we're going to have a kid. The big thing, though, was, okay, she's a year older than I am, and so she's prime age to have a baby herself.
Okay.
She never wanted a baby.
Oh, I didn't know this story. Okay.
Yeah, she never wanted kids up until she met me, and we started talking about kids. All of a sudden, the light flickers, and she
didn't meet the right person.
And neither did I. To
right.
be honest, neither did I. And so we finally find our person, and we want to build a family together. So we have that talk again. Well, one of the big talks that night was, okay, so if you, Melissa, if you get pregnant, am I going to feel jealous? Because
you decided you were both going to try and get pregnant.
So that led us to the mutual decision of we're going to find a donor who will hopefully donate to both of us. So at least if we both have babies, then they'll have the same father.
Okay.
Same donor.
This is a complicated thing.
It's complicated. And like you said, people take for granted how easy it is to have a whoopsie.
Right.
If you are in a same-sex relationship and you decide to bring children in, you are either adopting, or you're finding a surrogate, or you're finding a donor. And there's so many other variables that you have to consider. Whereas if you're in a straight relationship, you might have a whoopsie after, a drunken stupor,
Right.
And people, again, I feel like they take for granted for that. I feel like they take for granted what they have the ability to do so easily.
Right. And then even on that note, though, I didn't really realize until I worked in adoption so many couples that deal with infertility.
Right.
So that's a whole nother subject. So you decide you're both going to try, but what if one gets pregnant and one doesn't? What about jealousy? Now that's a big ugly word no one wants to talk about, and you certainly don't want to talk about that in terms of a baby. But jealousy over what?
the attention one's going to get over the other.
For being pregnant?
For being pregnant. I mean, you can go walk down the street. You walk to, I know you're at Target.
Yeah.
You go to Target, you see a pregnant woman, and you're going to see a stranger come up and want to touch their belly. And they want to dote on them. And they,
And you don't even like people touching you, but it's still the...
Right. Don't touch me. Just don't touch me, basically. But it's the feeling.
Right.
And so many of my friends, again, around the same age, were pregnant or had babies, and they would always talk about, oh, I felt him kick. Oh, and when they're infants, oh yeah, I'm breastfeeding and it's a magical experience and I get to do this and it's a connection and it's a bond that I'm always going to have with my kid. Well, okay, so if I get pregnant, Erin's not going to experience that. If she gets pregnant, I won't experience that. So that's why we decided to try at the same time. So we found a donor online. And so in this project that I worked on...
Did you just go to Craigslist?
Oh, God, no. No, it was an actual donor site. It's actually linked to sperm banks.
Okay.
So we went to this site, and luckily we found someone who is a native to our hometown.
Okay.
So it was a lot easier to do the donations.
Right. And by the way, it doesn't mean they go and have a 3-way. Let's clear that up,
Lord.
because I'm saying that half jokingly, but these are some of the comments when people are either being funny or they just don't understand how it works. That's not what it is.
Oh, no, Erin was asked by a dear friend of hers, well, so did you have sex with him? Really? Like, no, you don't. Just like you said, it's ignorance or obliviousness.
An insensitivity in some parts. Like, just stop and say the question out loud to yourself and see how it sounds.
Right.
Okay.
Would you want to be asked that? No.
Right.
So,
is it yours?
No, and it's funny because my response to questions like that, to a straight couple or a straight person who's asked me this, I'm like, okay, so when you had your son, what position were you in when...
Oh my gosh.
Right? It's
or
too intrusive.
Is it your baby? You look at him,
Yeah.
Don't ask these questions.
Exactly. So we ended up both trying with the same donor, and he's amazing, man.
Not in a 3-way.
Not in a 3-way. Not in a 3-way. It was very much not how I pictured having a baby. I'll tell you that. Because, I mean, we're talking medical. We're talking very... not even basic, because it definitely wasn't basic.
It didn't have the, oh my God, let's make a baby.
No, there was no
fantasy.
romance in it. There was no romance in it at all. It was very medical. And we did it at home. So there's that. But so we went online, we did our research on how we were going to do it. We used the same donor, both trying, and month after month, we're looking at our ovulation strips. Because when, again, 2 women trying to get pregnant, even a straight person trying to get pregnant, you have to time things.
Right.
Quickly. Month after month, I had no lines on my ovulation strips. Erin's like a clock. She could feel when she was ovulating. Oh, my right side hurts. I'm ovulating. What? I didn't get that. So there's one moment I was looking at her across the table, and I was like, you know what? All these signs are pointing to Erin being pregnant. She's gonna have to be the one that does it first. I still tried, in the hopes that I might get pregnant. And then again, with my doctor's endorsement, I had to at least give it a shot. So after, I think it was 7 months of trying, and we're talking on the clock every month, she got pregnant. And a little bit of me, even though I was over the moon at the news that she was pregnant, I was jealous. Instantly, just like, well, what about me?
Yeah.
And I remember going home that night. She told me over the phone. I went home that night after work, and I was like, well, let's take a test in the morning just to be sure. And that was more of a Band-Aid to me, because there I was with an open wound of, oh, I'm not pregnant, but you are. Next day we took the test, confirmed the results from the night before. She was pregnant, and I kind of, in the back of my mind, I kind of knew, well, we're not gonna keep trying for me.
Right.
I'm not gonna say there's no point in it, but it's a lot to take.
The goals changed at this point.
The goals changed immediately. And so the jealousy thing, though, that kind of, with the, her being doted on and all that, all the attention, yeah, that was kind of, that also ebbed and flowed, and it came in and out to a point where I tried not to let it get to me, but it did. It got to me. But there was one moment where someone from my past actually called me, or text messaged me, rather. He text messaged me, and he knew, he had heard some, through the grapevine, because, Our town's not too big. He heard that my girlfriend was pregnant and that I was going to be a mom. But he called me out and said, well, you're not really going to be a mom.
Oh, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
And that was the first time you'd heard that from anybody other than in your own head, right?
Right. No, right. From anybody. And...
like, what is that asshole's problem?
Oh, I could there's a laundry list of problems with that man.
I know a therapist we can send him to.
Okay, great. So he's sending me this text message, and he's saying, well, you're not really going to be the mom, and how dare you bring a child into same-sex relationship? That's just tarnishing your house, that's tarnishing society, that's doing all these bad things to the world, and every child needs a mother and a father, and he wasn't even religious, really, but he started bringing religion.
He was righteous.
And he was righteous. And he was bringing religion into it. I'm like, you, what? Okay, that makes no sense.
Yeah, he sounds like a great man who should be a father.
I called him out on that, too.
Good.
I did. And I know, I told him, I kind of put him in his place, and I felt really good. But it was in that moment where I went from being jealous of Erin to being, and I write about this, to being kind of the mama bear protecting her cub. And it was in that moment I was like, you know what? I am the mom. Screw you and screw your ideals and what you believe. I am this kid's mom.
And you had the natural parental response at that moment.
I did, and that's when it clicked. And because up until that point, and that was a few months of Erin being pregnant, up till that point, I was just kind of the in the shadows, really, because she was in the forefront being the one that was pregnant.
Right. So thanks, Guy, for being an asshole.
You know, really, thank you, because he kind of put it in perspective for me. So sure, I didn't get to feel the stomach flips of, the kicks. I didn't get to feel our daughter kick her. Well, she kicks me now, so there's that,
And you didn't get the sickness.
I didn't get the morning sickness.
The body image stuff that comes along with it.
No.
The labor pains.
No, I didn't. No, and then, one of the questions I was asked, and it's kind of funny, was, okay, so, do you rub her feet when they're swollen? Do you go around town and you get all those food cravings that she has? Do you pick them up? Because you're the father role, right? And who's going to celebrate Mother's Day? Is it going to be Erin or is it going to be you? Are you going to share it or are you going to take Father's Day? What? Why would I take Father's Day? I'm a mom.
Why are these questions even being asked?
Because people, again,
they don't know.
They're oblivious. And it's not in their personal life. They don't know.
Right.
They just don't know. They don't get it. I mean, even my dad got it. He was Happy Mother's Day and she was still pregnant and I wasn't,
Right.
But
good old Dad.
Good old Dad. He comes back.
Dad does come back around. See, we set him up like, oh, Dad, and then he comes back around, and now you've sent me a million pictures with your daughter sitting on Dad's lap, and this is what is so weird. Your daughter looks so much like you.
Yeah, she does. She really does.
Which, because I know Erin, your daughter is a mini you. Which I think is just awesome.
And she's a mini me because of personality. I mean, obviously, that's just...
But she looks like you.
She looks like me. Because Erin, bless her, she cannot tan. She is white as can be. And here I am, and I described Stevie with olive-colored skin. I have a tan year-round.
Right.
And my daughter, she has a tan year-round.
Dark hair. It's
straight. Erin has naturally curly hair. Stevie has straight hair. She has my eye color. She has, and I always joke around, she has what we call a little butt chin. Uh-huh. I have one. Erin doesn't have
Which
one.
is a genetic thing.
Right, it's genetic. And not to go too in depth with how we conceived her, but I was part of that process. I always joke that I got a little bit of my DNA in there. and maybe it was through osmosis. I don't know, but she looks just like me.
You willed it.
I willed it. I really did.
And you know what bio dad looks like, what donor dad looks like.
And she looks nothing like
No, nothing. I love this.
Nothing. Not the eye color, the hair color. Again, skin tone. He is whiter than Erin, And yet somehow our daughter looks just like me. And like you said, I think I willed it. I think Erin willed it. But she is my mini-me. And that brings me to the whole, I didn't get to feel her inside of me. But from day one, from that tiny little blue line, I've carried her inside me. In other ways. Maybe not in my womb, but she's a part of me.
Right. One thing I want to bring up, just because throughout the course of this podcast, we've brought up things that people might not think about. So legally, at this point, there are barriers to when couples willingly go into a situation like you, right?
Right.
Where you decide to have a child naturally with some help. You guys have to go one step further, though, to secure your parental rights.
We do. And in fact, we're not married. We're not legally married. And so...
Even if you were, it doesn't...
Right. Even if we were, it's not an automatic, oh, this is a parent. When she was born, that, the nurse comes in and says, we need to fill out the birth certificate. Who's the father? And so Aaron says, oh, well, Melissa's the second parent. Because, I think it was just recent, I think it was that year that our daughter was born. They changed the law here in California. I don't know about the other states, but I know in California they changed it so it doesn't say mother and father on the birth certificate. It says parent one, parent two.
Right, and these are things that people don't think about. We'll just put a mother and father. That's just how biology works. Well, this is the situation we're talking about where it doesn't apply.
Right.
You both willingly went into this. So what did the nurse do?
So the nurse asked if we were married. She said no. She says, okay, well, did you file a domestic partnership? She said no. She says, you can't be on the birth certificate. So another little dagger. But I knew we were eventually going to be married, and we would eventually have to cross that bridge and change paperwork, whatnot. So that was, again, on her birthday. Her 1 year birthday, though, Erin surprised me a week shy of Stevie turning 1. Erin surprised me, and she works in the legal field. I don't know what she did. I don't know how she did it, but she pulled some strings. Maybe she paid. I don't know. But my name is now on the birth certificate. Does that mean that I have legal rights to her? No. But it's on the birth certificate. It made me feel great.
Right, it means something.
It means something to me. Now, as far as being her legal guardian, we've taken the proper precautions. So if something were to happen to Erin, I'm in her will as the responsible party for our daughter. But legally, I'd have to actually adopt her. So there's fees I have to pay.
To have your own child be legally yours.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, I'll show a picture to you. She's my kid. We just talked about that. But yeah, so there's formalities I have to go through. And it's time consuming. It's hitting our wallet. It's a lot of things that other people, again, take for granted, that you can't just name someone the father, which in our situation.
And to be perfectly honest, I'm not going to get to where you can quote me on the law on this. I've seen the situations where couples have decided to name someone who is not the biological father as the father, and if he knowingly goes into that, as part of the agreement to be that kid's parent, then you can't come back later and be like, well, I want a paternity test. You sign on to that. So there are ways within traditional heterosexual partnerships and parenting where this is not, where not only is this not an issue, you can name someone else, and there has been precedents set so that they, even if they are not the biological parent, have the responsibility as that parent if, let's say, that partnership dissolves. So this is where we talk about institutionalized homophobia or things that are set up to minimize minorities, whether it's women or the LGBT community. This is real. And my argument to people when they say, no, it's not, is then you clearly have not experienced it, certainly not firsthand, but you haven't done the background on it. And come at me, bro.
Exactly.
So you're gonna eventually have to adopt your daughter.
Yeah, and we're gonna be in that process coming up shortly. Because eventually we are gonna get married, and when we make that, and again, thank the Supreme Court, now we can, because when we first started dating, we couldn't.
Right.
In California we could, but nationwide you couldn't.
Right. And that's a whole new set of things.
That is a whole nother podcast. But with that, so we've always, she's my person. I'm going to marry her. And once that happens, but again, I have to do that first before I can adopt my own kid, who I've raised. She's 2.5 years old, and I've raised, and terrible twos, I get to I get the brunt of it too, and so it kind of sucks, but also it makes me appreciate it a little more, the parenting, that I am a parent. It makes me appreciate the fact that I get to be a parent.
And we've talked about perspective taking. We talked about this last episode, actually, about how being positive all the time can actually be detrimental to you. This is where perspective taking takes really important, it takes a place of importance, because you could focus on I didn't get to carry her. I don't have legal rights at this time. I don't, blah, blah, all the I don'ts. But instead, you've decided to focus on the positive and really, for instance, what a switch in that guy being a total asshole to having the moment that's what sparked the mama bear in you, and that's what made you realize you're a mom. And just talking about that gives me chills. So perspective taking is so important. It works out, even when it feels like it doesn't work out. It works out if you stick to the long-term plan, whatever that is. And sometimes that plan is exactly opposite of what you intended. So if people want to know more about your story, because we only touched on it in this hour, where will people be able to find out eventually?
Eventually. So I submitted a chapter that's going to it's a collection of stories from non-biological moms. The book is tentatively going to be called What's in a Name. My chapter will be published in 2019, I believe January, February 2019. I actually have my deadline to turn it in is next week, so wish me luck. But it'll be out next winter, next spring, and it's going to be a lot of stories, not just my story, but lots of stories not just about jealousy, not just about infertility and fertility, just lots of stories from the perspective of someone who didn't get to carry their own child, but they're in the same sex relationship. And I believe they're actually going to be touching on another book for gay men who adopt or who have surrogates and whatnot. There's supposed to be a series.
Right. And you could, even if you don't necessarily relate firsthand to the LGBTQ struggle in this way, I work with clients on a regular basis where stepmom is clearly more of a mother to the children than biomom in some situations. So it's just something to think about as we wrap things up, and you'll be able to follow along, and we'll keep you posted when that book comes out, and also invite you to give us some feedback. Unless you're an asshole, then you can, go fuck yourself. We don't want to hear it. But anyway, we do appreciate the feedback. And Melissa, thank you. I know that this has been a big process. I know that, you coming to record this, it puts it out in there. And I think at the end, everybody turned out a superhero in the story. It's it's a feel-good ending.
It is. It really is. It's like you said, it's perspective.
Right. So thank you very much for joining us today, and for you for listening. If you have not done so already, please subscribe and rate the podcast, and share it with those friends and loved ones. I certainly expect we'll have at least a couple new listeners, because your parents probably had no idea about this until you were on it.
Oh, I don't even know if I'm going to tell them.
Oh.
Although my dad does come out as the hero in this, so,
yes.
So maybe.
Yeah. And so thank you, because I know that this was, it's so brave to talk about things like jealousy, because that's not something that's okay to talk about in this situation. But I think it's really important to, if you're going to have a full life experience, to validate all of the feelings, and then also be able to focus then on the more positive ones as you come out the other end. So please and thank you for subscribing and rating the podcast. We will be back next week with more. And if you ever have any recommendations on topics that you want covered, by all means, please get in touch with us. You can find Deanna. She'll be back. Hilarious Humanitarian on Instagram. I am Shut Up Skippy. Also the H Humanitarians podcast as well. So that does it for us. Bye. You can say bye too.
Bye.
I don't have to have the final word.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me.
Okay, maybe I do. Bye.